Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Max Edwards. I am the US-based sales engineer for Kakapo Systems. And today, I'm really excited to go over our product, Keep My Place in Queue. Now, what I'd like to accomplish with this webinar, first and foremost, I want to define what Keep My Place in Queue is. We'll go over how it works. We'll do a live demonstration so we can see it in action from both the agent and the supervisor perspective. We'll talk a little bit about the configuration, go over how Keep My Place in Queue can help you, a few common use case examples that we see pretty often, and then we'll break it off for questions and answers. So let's go ahead and let's begin. Now, before I dive directly into what Keep My Place in Queue is, I wanted to see if this type of situation looked familiar to anybody. We have a bunch of callers in queue already. The longest waiting call is at 10.5 minutes, 9 callers waiting. Average speed of answer is sitting at 2 minutes and 8 seconds, and our average abandon time is sitting at 1:56. So unfortunately, based off these numbers, we do expect many of our callers will end up abandoning before getting to an agent. And this is where Keep My Place in Queue comes in. So Keep My Place in Queue is our virtual queuing and callback feature for BroadSoft call centers. Now, just so we're all on the same page here, I'd like to define a couple of terms. And the first one is just, what is a callback? So for us, a callback is when someone calls into a call center, they press a digit because they hear a message saying, press 0 to receive a call back when it's your turn. So then the caller presses 0, they can hang up, and then they receive an inbound call from an agent when their request is next in line to be answered. So that's our callback. And then if you hear me mention virtual queue, which I'll probably mention a little later on, a virtual queue is just a digital queue that a caller doesn't physically wait in. It's, contrast it with your call center queue where people are actually waiting. All right, so now that we know what Keep My Place in Queue is, how does it work? So just to kind of illustrate this, I'd like to use just an example. So let's say my colleague Lee buys a brand new computer and he needs some assistance with setting something up. So he calls into the technical support line, and when he calls in, he hears in the entrance message something that says if he doesn't want to wait in line, press 0 to receive a call back. So Lee says, I don't want to wait, and presses 0. Lee then hears a second message, basically a confirmation message, telling him that he's going to receive a call from an agent when his request is next in line to be answered. He can then hang up, go about his day, and then when his request is next, an agent will call out to Lee, and then Lee will get the assistance he needs. So that's on the caller side. On the agent side, there's very little that actually changes, and the agent will actually handle that Keep My Place in Queue request identically or almost identically to any other live caller, just depending upon the agent configuration. So instead of continuing to talk about it, I figure we can switch over to our live demo now. So let me get my supervisor dashboard up. And the first thing that I'd like to do here is we want to go ahead and, we already got a couple of calls in, so that's good. So we have a couple of calls here. I'm going to add in one more, so just bear with me one moment. All right, and then we'll turn that into a Keep My Place in Queue request. So what we can see right here is we have three calls. 2 are live callers, and one of them is a Keep My Place in Queue request. We can see one of those callers is currently ringing to me. And then if we have one of our agents handle those other calls, so we no longer have Lucy and Michael, we'll then see that, oh, pardon me, one second here. Oh, bear with me one moment, folks. I forgot to turn something off, so give me 1 second here. There we go. So let me just place that in real quick. So we'll change that. Oh, sorry, one more time. So we have that call. We'll change that to a Keep My Place in Queue request, and bam, there we go. I apologize for that, folks. So this is what I wanted to show. We have the Keep My Place in Queue prompt up here. It tells me that I have a callback waiting. It tells me the queue that it came from, the name and number, if we have a name saved for that user, and then how long it's been since they put in that request. Now, a couple other things with the keep my place in queue request here. Since I am set up and Kakapo support is set up as a premium call center. So what that means is I'd have most of the normal or all the normal features that you'd get with that. So when I call back out to this user for this keep my place in queue request, I'm actually going to be showing the DNIS number for the call center. So this user is going to see the number that they called calling them back, as opposed to my normal caller ID. So let's go ahead and process that. Now, you'll also have the capability of doing other things, such as being able to apply an account code or disposition code like you would for any other call in a premium call center. And you'll also have the same call center capabilities, such as being able to transfer that, or sorry, my apologies, escalate that to the first supervisor. We can do an instant conference / emergency escalation, or we can choose the supervisor we prefer to escalate to. So you'll have all those same capabilities with keep my place in queue and a premium call center. Now let me go ahead and we will end this call. And then we're going to go ahead and close that out. So that's the first part of the demo that I wanted to go over. Now the second part, we're going to put in a few more keep my place in queue requests. All right, excellent. Now, with keep my place in queue, if we have a, we have different requests in there, and whether it's other keep my place in queue requests or live callers, with keep my place in queue, it's still going to follow the normal prioritization of a call center. So it's always going to be first in, first out. Since Michael Smith put in the request before any of the other users, it looks like very briefly, that's the request I have first. However, as a supervisor, I can go ahead and I can promote a different caller, so a different keep my place in queue request. And then if there was a live caller in here as well, I'd also be able to promote the live caller and answer that call as opposed to taking the keep my place in queue request first. Now let me promote Michael again. Now, a couple of things I wanted to mention with Michael. So number one, we have Michael's name, we have Lucy's name, but we can also see next to Michael that he's a Salesforce contact. And that's because I have Salesforce tied into my Unity application here. So with the CRM integrations with popular CRMs such as Salesforce, Zoho, Microsoft Dynamics, we can automatically label and identify any inbound callers as long as you have their phone number saved within your CRM as a contact. We can do things such as add, manual call logs with whatever manual notes you want to add. We can do automatic call logging. We really have a lot of different things that we can offer. I can also pop the CRM and look at Michael's contact page before going and placing the call out to him. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and just process that real quick. We'll take the other ones as well. All right, and then the last one. Now, we looked at what the callbacks look like from the agent perspective, so what the agent sees. We're looking and seeing what the supervisor sees, but there's one other aspect of the supervisor dashboard that we can set up for keep my place in queue, and that's the statistics up here. So we can see I have my statistics set up as well as the overall queue statistics. And I see some closed callbacks, I see some unassigned and closed callbacks here, but what if I wanted to see any callbacks that were assigned to me or assigned within the call center in general? All I have to do there is just go into my settings, go into my columns, and then just like any other statistic, I can add in my specific keep my place in queue callback statistics. And then we'll go ahead and then we'll be able to see how many we have assigned directly to myself, as well as how many are directly assigned within the call center. And then naturally, when you go ahead and close those columns will increment appropriately. We'll lose some assigned callbacks and gain some closed callbacks. All right, so now that we've taken a look at how the keep my place in queue works and how it looks for the agent and the supervisor, let's talk a little bit more about how it's working in the back end. So, as we mentioned before, Unity basically will hand those calls off based on the first in, first out, so the normal prioritization of a call center. But how is Unity able to do that? And how is Unity able to prevent a live caller from ringing to an agent with Keep My Place in Queue? Now, BroadSoft on the back end, when we're setting up Keep My Place in Queue, it only sees the escape calls. So one of the features we need enabled for a call center is escape calls. So when the caller escapes, BroadSoft sees that as an escape call, but the Kakapo virtual queue is going to retain that caller's information in order to process that Keep My Place in Queue request. Now, there are a few things that we do need to set up in order to get everything configured for Keep My Place in Queue. We have a really great guide, goes through everything step by step with screenshots and shows you everything you need to do to get it set up. So I won't go over the whole setup process, but things such as escape calls, guard timers, bounce calls while routing all need to be enabled. Now, one of the most important things, and it's a strong recommendation, it's not a requirement, but we strongly recommend creating a specific agent unavailable code for Keep My Place in Queue. And the reason we recommend that is when Keep My Place in Queue requests are being handed out, what the system is doing is Unity is switching your available state for you. So when I have a Keep My Place in Queue request handed out to me, Unity automatically switches me to unavailable Keep My Place in Queue callback. And then if, let's just say, a live caller is prioritized, I get switched back to available so I can take that live caller. So Unity itself is actually controlling that, and it's changing your agent state just so we can properly prioritize those requests and ensure you're not getting a live caller while you're processing the Keep My Place in Queue request. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention briefly, and I jumped in here before because my settings were inaccurate or incorrect before, but I mentioned earlier in the webinar that with the agent experience, we can make it identical or almost identical to what they had before Keep My Place in Queue is enabled. So if we wanted to make that experience identical for agents, what we would do is we would disable this first option, the prompt me to perform the callback first, and we'd enable the second option. And the reason we do that is this option, when disabled, will automatically send that Keep My Place in Queue request through to your phone. So you hear your phone ringing, you then answer the phone, and then the outbound call gets placed. So again, that's basically pretty much identical to what the agent experience was beforehand with live callers. The second option here, we looked at what it looks like when we don't automatically close those callbacks. So if we go ahead and turn that on, those callbacks are automatically closed for the agents, and thus the agent experience is going to be identical to what it was before. If not, it's just a matter of 3 or 4 additional mouse clicks in order to basically process everything. Now the last option here, this is more for, maybe some call centers where agents don't always log in first thing in the morning. If I'm arriving a little bit early to work, I log in, but I'm not going into the call center yet, I can still open up Unity and see any assigned callbacks so I can process those. Or same thing, if I'm logging out maybe 30 minutes before my shift is over, having this turned on will allow me to see any callbacks that I have assigned to me so I can process those without having to worry about any live callers. All right, so that covers what I wanted to go over on the live demo portion. I'm going to switch back to our PowerPoint here. So we took a look at the agent and supervisor experience for Keep My Place in Queue. We spoke a little bit about the configuration and the setup. And again, just to reiterate, we do have a step-by-step guide on our website, has screenshots and everything you need. We'll take you through the whole process start to finish. In a nutshell though, all you need to do is assign the licenses to the agents through our portal and then configure the call centers for Keep My Place in Queue. Now there's one additional thing related to setup that we haven't really gone over, and some of you folks may have heard when I said before, but the way Keep My Place in Queue works is we need to have a visible caller ID for the caller. Now it's on our roadmap to be able to create a premium Keep My Place in Queue where people can put in an alternate phone number to receive a call back on. They can receive, they can record a message for the agent, but for the time being, we need a visible caller ID. So what we recommend is we always recommend putting in a hunt group with call forwarding always and call forwarding selective setup in front of your call center. Now, The reason we have that is the call forwarding selective will be set up to take any callers without any visible caller ID, and we're going to forward them to a queue or a call center without the keep my place in queue announcements and without it set up. For any caller that does have a visible caller ID, that's where call forwarding always will come into play, and then it'll forward them to the queue or DNS that does have the announcements and keep my place in queue set up. From there, experience is just like any other, calling into a call center, you wait in line. If I called in with a visible caller ID, I can then decide at any point, okay, I don't want to wait. I'll just put in for a callback, so I'll escape. I re-enter as a request. And then from there, the call or the request will pass to the agent, and then the agent will process that keep my place in queue request, or will take the live caller, just like they would before. All right, so now we've spoken about, what keep my place in queue is. We've taken a look at it. We've gone over how it works and a little bit of the setup. How is keep my place in queue going to help you? So number one, it's going to massively improve the customer journey and experience, which will just result in fewer abandoned calls. Because callers no longer need to wait in line to talk to an agent. They'll get a message up front saying, hey, if you don't want to wait in line, press 0, and we'll give you a call back as soon as it's your turn to be assisted. You're also going to reduce those long wait times. So if callers don't have to wait, then they'll be able to put in those keep my place in queue requests. They won't have to wait in line, and then you'll have a happier caller. They can also choose to wait for a few minutes. If they don't get answered within a few minutes, they can then put in a callback. So again, we're still reducing those long wait times. And both of those combined will really work together to greatly reduce those abandoned calls that you see. Now, the third item here, quick and easy configuration. The first time you're setting up keep my place in queue, it'll take maybe 30 minutes at most. If you follow the guide we have, go through everything, you'll have it set up fairly quickly and easily. And then every other instance you set up after that, since you've already gone through everything, it'll take maybe 5 or 10 minutes for every additional queue and everything else you need to set up for keep my place in queue. And then, lastly here, we looked at what the agent experience looks like. There's really minimal training needed to utilize this feature. So the agent experience will be identical or almost identical, save for 3 or 4 mouse clicks. So it'll really cut down the amount of time that we need to train agents in order to utilize this feature and roll it out. And then, I figured just going over some common use cases that we see fairly often. So number one, doctor's surgeries or doctor's offices in general. Certain doctor's offices, they do have a pretty high inbound call volume. Maybe some, certain offices I've worked with can field, between 50 to 100 calls an hour. And if you think about a normal doctor's office, they usually have maybe 3 or 4 people working the phones behind the front desk. So if you're dealing with 50 to 100 people calling per hour and you only have 3 or 4 people answering those calls, allowing those callers to put in for a callback request will just greatly improve their experience calling in, and it'll also make all of the patients feel better because they know that they don't have to necessarily wait. They can put in for a callback request and they will get called back when it's their turn. Similar example, small businesses with limited agent pools. Maybe there's a promotion that's being run, maybe there's a special marketing campaign going on, or maybe there's just, maybe this business is just used to a large volume of inbound calls. Keep my place in queue can help with those limited agent pools because again, we can alleviate some of the burden of those live callers by changing those live callers into keep my place in queue callback requests. So the agents can then prioritize and work with the live callers, then process those callback requests after the live callers have been handled. Third example, international businesses or really any business with uncommon working hours or users and employees across different time zones. Again, if you have a overnight shift and you're having a hard time finding people to, man the phones during that shift, keep my place in queue can really assist with that because number one, if you have a large inbound call volume, a lot of those callers or all those callers, I should say, will have the option to put in for a callback. And then number two, it'll allow your agents to prioritize the live callers and then process those callback requests when they get a chance. All right, so that actually covers everything I wanted to go over in terms of the live demonstration and the PowerPoint. So I just wanted to invite my colleague Lee on here just to review any questions that we may have received.
Morning, everybody. Yes, Max, we've got a few questions. Number one, is there a limit on the size of the Keep My Place in Queue requests?
So great question. Currently, there is no limit to the amount of keep my place in queue requests that can be put in. Just to give kind of an extreme example, you can have 100 people call in and put in, each one put in a keep my place in queue request with only one agent logged into the queue. So there is no limit. You have unlimited waiting spots.
Lovely. The second one is, can we transfer Keep My Place in Queue callback?
So that's another great question. Currently, the agent is not able to transfer the keep my place in queue callback request, but the supervisor is able to. So the supervisor can, they can move those by promoting them. They can assign them to certain agents. They can reassign them to other agents. So it would be the supervisor who has the ability to move those calls around.
Perfect. One last question. What happens if a customer requests the Keep My Place in Queue callback and then they call back into the call center? What happens then?
Okay, so you trailed off a little bit there, but I believe the question was, what if someone calls into a call center, puts in a keep my place in queue request, hangs up, and then calls back in a little bit later before receiving the call back. So in that scenario, the keep my place in queue request would be canceled because the live caller called back in. So they'll be waiting in queue as a live caller, and the keep my place in queue request will be removed as a result.
Perfect. No further questions. Thanks for your questions, everyone.
Yeah. All right, so it doesn't sound like we have any other questions. So if anyone does think of any questions in the meantime here, a couple other things I just wanted to mention. So number one, if anyone is interested in any demos of Keep My Place in Queue, if you want us to demo it to any of your clients, if you want a more customized demo, want to go over some more questions, please, by all means, feel free to reach out to either myself, if you're in North America, or Lee, if you're in Europe. If you happen to be in, not in North America or not in Europe, reach out to either one of us. We'll make sure you get assisted. But, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. You want to have, you want to talk about pricing, talk about, what, clients this may be good for. We're here to assist you. And did we have any other questions pop in that last moment?
No, that's all, Max.
No, no other questions. Going once, going twice. All right. Well, since we don't have any other questions at this point in time, if anyone thinks of anything after the fact, please feel free to get in touch with us. But otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you all for attending. We really appreciate your time and appreciate you spending, part of your day with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful rest of your week. And if there's anything you need, just let us know. Take care and have a good one, everybody.